Welcome to Inside the Artist's Mind with your hosts, Jay Harmon and Sally Barnard. Jay and Sally have always wondered what the inspiration is that drives others to create and express their art. Inside the Artist's Mind, we'll dive into the mind of the artist and teach us more than we ever knew. Enjoy the show!
Hi, and welcome to Inside the Artist's Mind. This is a show where we try to talk to creative people about why they create, how they create, and what they create. So today, my name is Jay Harmon, as it was yesterday, and this is Sally Barnard.
Hi.
And so we are going to be talking again today to another creative individual, and we want to tell you, if you would like to be on our show, we'd love to have you on here. If you create anything, if you can be a visual artist, you can be a musician, you can be a tap dancer, you can be an actor, you can be a writer, you can be a chef, you can be whatever it is that you create. And we would love to talk to you about where you get your ideas, your inspirations, and what you do. So anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce Niles
Fortner.
Yeah. Niles Fortner. I want to make sure I got that right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and Niles is a writer.
Yes, I am.
And a journalist, and he works with which paper do you work for, or are you freelance?
Well, I'm actually a freelancer. I work with different newspapers and magazines around town. So it's a variety, such as like Sun Sentinel, the Miami New Times, Fort Lauderdale Magazine, South Florida Digest, and just different publications all from, I would say, between West Palm to Miami.
That was going to be my question. So, yes, so it's quite a distance, but not too far. So you are local.
Yeah, all local.
Right.
So in your type of business now, where do you get your information, or how do you find the people who you are going to write about?
Well, that's actually a very good question. I do a lot of networking events, so I will just simply go to an event, talk to people, do the old-fashioned thing, just give them my business card. I'm very involved in the community, so even if I'm just simply going to a restaurant and I want to maybe write about the restaurant, I'll say, oh, where's the manager? Can I speak with him? And it's always positive stuff that I write about. So if you're looking for like positive stories that are all local and fun, informative, yeah, that's what I mostly cover.
That's so interesting. So when you walk in, I'm sure by now you're probably recognized by a lot of people when you go in there, right? And eager to talk to you.
Yeah, they are actually. It's funny because I'm with this nonprofit, and before I even introduced myself, someone was like, I know you. And I'm like, really? How do you know me? We never met before. And they're like, oh, I recognized your name on the sign-in sheet. Right. And I was like kind of blown away by that, honestly. Because, I always feel like if we feel like our work is not out there in the community, truthfully it is. Even if we feel like no one is seeing it or paying attention, trust me, it gets out there.
So do you do different things, like do you do interviews, or you just sit down and talk to somebody and then write write a story about that? What is your best style of writing like that?
I'm very open to interviews. Everything's pretty much I don't even want to say interview, it's more of a conversation that we're having.
Right.
So it's just a conversation about their story, what inspired them, whether they're an artist, entrepreneur, business owner, just anything. If they're willing to give me some time, just to hear them out, and if they want.
So basically, what you do is kind of what we do here.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah.
Now you've given me a lot of ideas of what to ask you. My first question would be, what did inspire you in the very beginning?
Well, it actually goes back to my childhood a little bit. My dad shared a whole bunch of stories with me when I was a kid. He would always take me to the movies, and he had these comic books from the 1970s, and I remember just really sitting down with my dad one day. He was telling me about stories and a whole bunch of things, and I remember being a kid and saying, wow, I love this. I love stories. And one day when I got to junior high, I wrote about a student, and it was the usual thing. I just wanted to get a good grade like all the other students, but I turned it into an actual article, and it just became one after the other. And someone said, well, you like stories, you're writing about someone in your community, why don't you combine the two? And I did, and I just decided to keep going with it.
Okay. Did you go to school for journalism?
Yeah, right up the street, FAU, go Owls.
FAU. That's my alma mater too. So.
Oh, wow.
So you're comparatively quite young when this came to you then, or?
Yeah, I would say I was young. The moment I realized I actually wanted to be like a community storyteller, I would say that would go back to maybe high school when I actually had a teacher named Mr. Conde, and I was writing for the school blog, and I was just like writing about different community happenings. Honestly.
You're from this area. You went to school, high school here.
Yeah, I'm actually a native, which is funny because when I tell someone I'm a native, they look at us, we're like, oh, I didn't know they had natives here.
Yeah, I know, we're rare. But, so what school did you go to? What high school?
Piper High School, actually.
Great.
So, just to ask you a few other questions. So, this is intriguing to me because even at an early age, you decided this is kind of what you may want to do. But did writing come very easy to you? I mean, were you were you reading a lot of books, or?
Yeah, luckily my parents, they introduced me to a lot of books when I was a kid.
Right.
So I think that really inspired me to actually just get into storytelling. And it's funny you mentioned that because people think you have to be like a great wordsmith and like a genius with words. But if you really know how to structure something, it can take you a long way.
Was there any particular subject at that point, or you knew it was going to be through interviews and actually writing about someone else, or did you ever want to write about yourself?
I actually never thought about writing about myself. I actually feel like I might be bad at it, but writing other people's stories, I think, comes a little more natural to me, actually.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Now, back years ago when I worked with a newspaper, I know that the editors, when they used to go out and get their stories, what they had to do, they did everything with a pad of paper and a pencil. I mean, that was their whole thing. This was long before modern technology, and so they had to, and I'm sure it's much more streamlined now how you interview people, right?
It made it a lot easier, right, than when we were younger. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it's not easy, but it's easier.
Well, it's made it, and does from what I've heard, a lot of writers sometimes they use AI for writing the things, or are you more doing your own thing?
Honestly, I'm doing more of my own thing. However, I do use like ChatGPT and things like that to review my articles. And it's like before I send it to like an editor for like, mistakes that I may have or like grammar, things like that, I just run it through ChatGPT. But I always tell people, we can kind of tell when you used ChatGPT just a little bit because it's good. I actually do like it a lot, but something is just missing. Like ChatGPT doesn't know what it's like to sit down with an actual artist, get their story, and really know what it's like to maybe shake their hand or hug a baby, and it's missing that.
You're putting much more personal things.
Yeah,
that you
like to put personality into it. That's,
AI,
definitely.
As far as I know, I haven't really used AI. But how would the AI know the personality of the person?
Yeah,
I mean, I know it's good,
I can't see
know
how
it's
they could do
clever,
that.
right.
How it can really understand without, because they haven't. AI,
the person.
whatever.
Well, maybe they
hasn't really been there to talk to the person, but you have, so you can actually feel their personality, and that's what you kind of put into what you're writing, correct?
Yes, I call it storytelling with structure.
Right, absolutely. I can see that, Jay, absolutely. Because you have to well, you don't have to. I'm sure there are many people out there that are not doing that. But I can totally understand why you would want to personalize it a little bit, yourself.
And so have you been able to meet a lot of various personalities from, I don't know, I don't want to say celebrities, but I mean from a lot of different walks of life, a lot of different types of things?
Yeah, actually, I'll use Boca Raton as an example. Someone was growing sea moss in their backyard, and they were like, yeah, we should write about this guy, and he made 7 figures in 7 months. Just selling sea moss out of his backyard, and then
Wow.
Wow.
one day I was just flipping through the channels, and Shark Tank was on,
Oh,
and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, I know that guy.
Yeah.
He was the one that I wrote the article on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he actually made a deal.
I can't believe you're mentioning Shark Tank. Every single night before I go to bed, for some reason, I'm absolutely addicted to Shark Tank. I find it so interesting. So I probably know the guy you're talking about. I've watched a lot of episodes.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But there's a lot of people I've written about, this bare knuckle boxer guy, and when you see him, you would think he's like the most intimidating guy in the world.
Yeah.
Like with the tattoos and the muscles, but he was like the sweetest man, and he's like, oh, I'm doing this to actually raise awareness on suicide awareness because his trainer was his brother.
Uh-huh.
And his brother passed away from suicide, unfortunately. And he's like, I'm just going to continue fighting in his name. So there's a lot of interesting stories, and just restaurants, artists around the town, things like that.
Yeah, and because that's how we try to go beyond just what you see or the person you meet, because you don't really get to know the person inside until you really talk to them and see what a little bit of the background and a little bit of where they're coming from, and how they developed into what they're doing today.
Which is interesting because we didn't know too much about you, but it's just like we're having a conversation. So the more we ask you, the more you get to know one another. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
We didn't know. Now I know a lot more about you. It's very, very interesting.
So what, I guess, how can I say this? What type of people really inspire you when you want to talk to somebody? What is it that you'd want to go to see one person versus somebody else? What would make somebody a priority to talk to?
Well, honestly, I think it goes back to what I said earlier about structure. So if the person structures their story in a way they feel like it can be told, that makes all the difference in the world. So if someone comes to me and they're like, I'm just an artist, and I'm like, okay, that's nice. But if they're not willing to really open up and tell me what kind of artwork they do,
Right.
let's say there's another artist. It's not so much one is better than the other, but maybe they tell me something like, I'm a Boca Raton native. I do abstract art. I've been doing this probably since I was 6 years old. I am self-taught. They're telling me their story in a way that's more effective. So if someone just has a really good idea, like what they feel like their story could be or what it
Right.
should be or in a way it should be said,
Right.
then I will hear them
Okay,
out.
so it's kind of how they express themselves and how
Yes.
they convey their story rather than just simple answers. It's because that makes for a very boring interview if people don't give you a lot of information.
Yes.
I may overdo it sometimes because I have a story and I say, you know what, I need to condense this to 5 minutes because I could go on with my story of all the things that have happened of how I actually became an artist. So I totally relate to that. But you also don't want to overdo it either. So you need to, I can only talk for myself, but I would, if you asked me, I would condense it to 5 minutes, try to get everything in.
Yeah.
So everybody has some sort of story.
Everybody has a story.
They do, actually, and
I
that's
mean-
something I've learned.
Yes.
That's what makes it interesting when you actually learn about people, what their story is and how they relate that story and how their life has been affected by what they've done. And
Absolutely. And one thing I learned too from, once again, my dad with the comic books and everything, I think of people as characters. So when I'm writing them, I think about like, okay, what's their backstory? What made they do 5, 10 years from now? What inspired them? So you're just structuring them the way a character would be structured. Because I think one day I woke up and I said to myself, isn't it weird that we live in a world where we know more about, like, let's say, Batman than like our neighbors and their story?
yeah,
Things like that.
yeah, true, true.
A perfect guest for our show because this is what we're trying to do, to bring in, it's in mind of what goes on as you, whatever your passion is, to talk about it and how that passion came about. So it's really interesting and very interesting what you actually are doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So you must have a lot of fun doing writing like that, to be able to meet all these different individuals and talk to them about their different style of work, whatever it may be, and in journalism, have you ever gotten into the different styles of writing, like editorial writing, or what should I say, political journalism, or anything like that?
Well, as far as political journalism, no, I really do try to focus more on community happenings with like a positive spin.
Right.
And as far as being an editor, I've been like a co-editor on some things, such as like, I remember even being in school, I would help students with their essays and things like that.
Uh-huh.
But just more professionally, I've done like co-editing. So like if someone's like an intern with like a newspaper or a magazine, they'll share their article with me and I'll try to help them along.
Okay.
Or even being a guest speaker at FAU, I've done that as well.
Okay, so you're kind of involved in teaching a little bit then.
Well, yeah, I'm just simply sharing my 2 cents.
Uh-huh.
Luckily, one of my awesome professors from FAU, Professor Prusher, she taught me a lot, and she's invited me to come back and speak to some of the journalism students about my experience, and just simply telling them like, hey, maybe you can try this and try that, and just help them a little bit.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, when you interview artists, I mean, artists involved a lot, that's what we do on our show, many different professions. But when you meet an artist that paints, a painter, well, a painter is also something different. Do you find that there's a common theme that may run through, like if someone is an artist opposed to somebody else that may be a writer? Do you find the personalities similar in some of the professions or not?
Yeah, definitely.
You do?
Like
Okay.
I've written about
Curious.
real estate agents, and sometimes their tone is a little different. But one thing I notice with a lot of self-taught artists, especially painters, is they will tell you almost everything about their life.
That's exactly. I am a self-taught painter. I've
Exactly,
never
I
had-
am too.
and
I'm
I just said.
self-taught artists really can tell you more about
Yeah.
how they have become involved with their artwork, because it's them. It's not like they went to schools and just did what they were told. They had to learn it themselves.
I love that you said that, because I said that I condense it, so you were very aware of what I was talking about at that point, because I think you realized I was self-taught because it just came to me. That's very interesting. So we could have conversations for hours, Jay.
Oh, I
about
know. I know.
self-taught.
Just talking about
Okay.
where we get
It's
the ideas
fascinating,
and everything.
Not
So
shy.
it's interesting. Don't you find it interesting when you're talking to creative people about how they're creative and what they do, and especially when it comes to writing, how they got involved? That's what we're doing here, is kind of seeing how people got involved with writing. I've had a lot of friends who are journalists, and I have one friend in particular who lives in North Carolina, and he's now goes to conventions. He's one of the top speakers there because he's been writing for so many years. He's done thousands of different stories and articles and everything, and he just loves it. And that, I remember when he started out just working for a small-time newspaper, and because I've known him for many, many years, and so now he's made it all the way through, and he really enjoys what he's doing.
I have to tell you a story about writing. I actually I'm quite good at writing for one reason. When I was in school, I am not a good speller at all. So when I came to something that I was writing, and I loved English literature, I'm from England originally, so I would be writing something and I couldn't spell the next word. So in my mind, I had to kind of imagine how would I say it without that word. So actually I taught myself to do that, which is kind of interesting. As you were saying that, I'm thinking, well, how am I able to write the way that I do? But I can express myself in a different way because I'm not a good speller. But now, of course, it's different because you can just, there's spell check and you can write whatever you like.
Yeah.
But when
you
I'm
can,
going back to school, we didn't have anything like that.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
right.
true. It was all different back then. Fortunately, I've always been a good speller, so not that it's really helped me out with my artwork, but
It's just
but
something I was not good
but
at.
I'm totally a visual person. I mean, do you find yourself are attracted to more visual things to write about? I mean, to relate to them visually.
Absolutely, honestly. If something is, maybe just dry or something, yeah. But if I go to an event and I see smiling faces, I see delicious food, I see people having fun, that's way more description that I can put in my article
Yeah.
versus, let's say, oh, bland white walls and almost looks like an insane asylum where there's no,
Right.
I guess, creativity in that
Yeah.
room.
Well,
Yeah.
the personality, you can get someone's personality. I'm a visual person too.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I like comedy actually, so I always try to bring comedy into something funny. Anyway, it just lightens the day. My show is positive, so
Yeah.
I can definitely relate to what you're saying. And you seem like a very, very positive person.
No, I try to be,
Yeah.
that's what we have to do.
Right.
And talking to people who are creative people. I mean, we have found that they're very interesting on the most part to talk to because of what they do. Being creative,
Right.
they just know how to share their what they do, and so I'm sure it's the same in your field being like that too.
Because we have singers, a lot of singers that we've interviewed now, and of course they have to be outgoing because they wouldn't be able to sing.
Yeah,
in front of
performers.
an audience.
Anybody is any kind of
Exactly.
a performer has to be pretty much outgoing. I mean, we've got singers, we've got other people who are used to being in front of an audience. And how do you feel about being in front of an audience? You like
I'm
that?
sure you don't mind.
No,
I knew that.
Yeah, she got it.
I get it. I get
Yeah.
it.
Tell.
Yeah. It's either you can or you can't because, I mean, I started later in life doing what I'm doing, but as long as I found my passion, that's all that's important. So, and you got it at a young age, so that's even
Yeah,
better.
that's great. I mean, you got you got a. Do you have any ambitions or things that you would like to eventually be able to do?
Well, not to count my chickens before they hatch, but one of my friends mentioned going beyond journalism. Actually, he's like, and I've been getting this for a long time. Like, write a book, do this. But I'm like, when people say that, I feel like they don't really know the effort that it takes to write a book. But I thought it was very interesting. And one of my friends is a filmmaker, and he's like, have you ever thought about maybe writing a short film and we can work on it together? And then when he said that, I'm like, there's really no reason why in my free time I can't work on something like this. So maybe to go into a different, I guess, medium for storytelling and still somehow maybe related to journalism. Maybe it's an artist that inspired me or a photographer that I met. I just think that might be something interesting.
Well, you might be able to think about going full circle and getting into comic books. Writing for
that's
comic books, because
interesting.
that's where you
Yeah,
said you
that's
got your
interesting.
inspirations from. So
Well, from his dad,
that because that's kind of where, gosh,
That's
kind of
interesting.
where I came from because I used to draw comic books, and
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm actually going to meet with a comic book editor next
you?
week. Yeah, he
So
wants me
you-
to edit some of his work.
Well,
Your
there you go.
inspiration
That's
from
good.
your father was he enjoyed comics, and so he passed that on to you. But I think and it's very interesting because the characters, each one has a character, each is
Yeah.
different. So you're bringing out
Right.
everybody's personality without actually talking to them because you're imagining the character. Correct? I can absolutely see that.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's fascinating.
Yeah, and
Imagination. Is
Each
what's so-
person you talk to is different.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you never know really what you're going to find out, and that's what makes it more interesting. I think is that it's more an individual thing on everybody you talk to.
That's interesting because if you're an artist and you can draw a character, you're actually going to give that character an identity. You can say whatever you like
Yeah.
because that's the character talking. So I can see the fascination in that. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, and so this is great. We we enjoy talking to anybody who likes to be creative. And do you have any methods or anything in how when you talk to somebody, how after that, what you do to create the story? I mean, is there any process that goes after the interview into doing that, or?
Well, I feel like when we're telling stories, most people think they have to go in order, like origin, middle, end.
Yeah.
But my personal method, and I'm not saying it's the right method or anything, it's just my personal style.
Uh-huh.
I call it the James Bond method. You want to start with the action because if you notice,
Okay. Okay.
every James Bond movie starts with the action,
Right.
and then they fill in the details.
Uh-huh.
So you have to find the action in someone's story.
Okay. Okay.
And
And
then
then
maybe
kind of
start
go
there.
from there, because that gets people's attention.
Yes, it's
when,
the hook.
when you start with the action, then people are drawn into the story, and then you can go back and I like that.
It's kind of actually even compare it to a conversation you're having with someone, because if you're just, oh yeah, my name is, and I'm not criticizing anything, everybody has their own personality, but if you start a little more animated, sorry, you're going to be drawn into that person, I think. So I think that's actually very important that you start with the action. I can totally see that too.
Yeah, even with an artist, let's say they're a painter, you don't have to start with their name is. Maybe they're in their studio and they're going crazy on their canvas and a whole bunch of things, and then the colors are popping and it's like splashing off the canvas. Like it kind of.
That's exactly what I do. It's something you see some of my art. You know, I know that I haven't been taught, as you haven't either, but there's apparently a certain way you start here and you go into that corner. I don't want to know that. I just put wherever I want, wherever it goes. And I think because if you put your mind into it more, it's not necessarily boring. I can't say that because there's some beautiful artwork there, but I do not follow that line at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can see what you're doing
and
there. Yeah.
but like my kind of artwork, I do more realism, and in that kind of thing, I put the creative part of it is how I put it together, that I want it to look a certain way, a certain style. And so I try to think of it that way, and it's quite well similar but different.
We have to. You asked me to ask you. I know we get carried away with each artist.
No, we got 3
have
minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah,
It's
so
3 minutes. I don't like to really bring that up on the show, but if we just get disconnected
And
from this, we'll know.
is there anything, while you have the platform here, to talk to artists? I mean, and artists or writers, I should say, journalists, aspiring
Right.
journalists, and any hints you could give them, or any tips that may be something they can use?
Yes, don't wait till you graduate to actually have a resume. If you're a writer, you can start writing now. You can start a blog. You can do Instagram, Facebook posts. You can actually show people your work and have a visual resume before you even graduate. And then with that visual resume, you can market yourself that you are a journalist and that you're someone who should be seen.
That was perfect. Thank you so much.
Very
It
good.
was
Yeah,
really
I think that
interesting
will
to have you as a
that
guest,
will
right?
help to inspire people, and
Absolutely.
and that's what we're trying to do on our show here, is to find creative people, and this can be in any style of creativity. If, as I said, if you are an actor, or you are a musician, or you are a writer, or anything you do that's creative, we would love to hear from you. Our number here is 1-888-994-4995. Please call the studio, and you can sign up to be on our show. We'd love to see you. Okay, so,
Bye for now, and we'll be here this time next week.
Okay, and we'll see you again next
As they
time.
say in England, ta-ta.
Thank you for watching Inside the Artist's Mind. We hope you enjoyed the show. Tune in next week as we explore more about the artist's passions and inspirations.